Hello, I am Matt Donnelly. It is Friday, so you know what that means? It is time to officially get hyped with the Friday Night Hype Show here on Fantasy Points. Let's go! Now, before we get into this week's slate of games, here are some notable injuries that you need to know before we get in and set those rosters. Dak Prescott, he had surgery on his hand. We're looking at 6 to 8 weeks there as the pin stabilizes the joint. Apparently, he's still planning on playing by October 30th. Even if he comes back by October 30th, I'm probably still not putting him in my lineup. Najee Harris, hey, possible ankle sprain. Maybe it's something, maybe it's not. Tests were negative. However, these happened on Monday. Najee Harris, he seems to think he's good to go. I don't care if he's good to go. He's not going anywhere near my lineup this week. Next up, Elijah Mitchell, 6 to 8 weeks, MCL sprain. Man, this one just hurts on a whole new level here. Chris Godwin, 2 weeks, hamstring. Maybe this all ties into that ACL coming back a little bit too soon. Time will tell, but Chris Godwin, get him out of your lineups. T. Higgins, he suffered a concussion here in week number 1. TBD for his status here on Sunday. And finally, McCorkle Jones, he had some back spasms there. He's day-to-day, but then again, aren't we all? Now, let's look at these slate of games here for Sunday. We've got the Carolina Panthers heading to the New York Giants. We got McCaffrey. We got Barkley. This is the premier matchup for all the running backs. New England, they are heading to Pittsburgh. We get Trubisky. We get McCorkle Jones. This is the matchup that we all want. Okay, probably not, but you know what? Hey, if your team started 0-1, this is probably the matchup you deserve. Now, next up, we have Atlanta at the Los Angeles Rams. Will Allen Robinson, will Kyle Pitts, will one of these two guys actually show up this week? We have Seattle. They are heading to San Francisco. And let's put a little wager on this contest. The winner of this game, they get Jimmy Garoppolo. Next up, Cincinnati versus Dallas in Big D. Hey, Dallas, they have all kinds of issues. And you know what? Even if Dak was there, they aren't a very good football team right now. This is not a good game to watch. Oh, man. Joe Burrow, he's going to get these Bengals right this week. Next up, we got Houston at Denver. Houston, we have a problem, and it is the Denver Broncos running backs holding on the ball on the 1-yard line. Next up, Sunday Night Football, one of the oldest rivalries in the National Football League. The Chicago Bears, they are heading to Green Bay to take on the Packers. Then on Monday night, we got not one, but 2 contests for you. That's right. We've got Tennessee at Buffalo. We got Minnesota at Philadelphia. Man, that Vikings-Eagles game, that is the premier matchup here this week as we head into Sunday, head into week number 2. But now let's talk about the 4 storylines that I'm most looking forward to as we head into this week, starting with the Arizona Cardinals heading to the Las Vegas Raiders for what already seems to be a playoff game. Not only is it a playoff game, we get a Chandler Jones revenge game. Both the Cardinals and the Raiders, they are on the playoff bubble. I hate to say it's week 2 already on the playoff bubble, but both these teams need to get a win. They cannot start 0-2. It seriously hampers their ability to make a push later on in the season. Run, Kyler, run. That is going to be the storyline here with former Cardinal Chandler Jones. Hey, we've all heard of maybe Kyler Murray not quite being where he needs to be and maybe playing a little bit too much Call of Duty. We'll see how ticked off Chandler Jones was at Kyler Murray last season and how he attacks him this game. It's not just Chandler Jones coming off the edge. It's Max Crosby coming off the edge as well. Look, Murray will likely find himself under pressure, much like he was last week. Kansas City, 28 quarterback pressures. That's not going to lighten up this week. I promise you that. Neither one of these offensive lines is any good. Let's call it the way it is here. Now, we know the Raiders, they're going to get after the Cardinals. We also know that the Cardinals are going to try and get after Derek Carr here after what we saw the Chargers do. Now, there's no one on this Cardinals roster named Khalil Mack. There's no one named Joey Bosa. So it's probably not going to be as big a deal. But Derek Carr, he doesn't scramble. I don't even know if he feels that pressure. I'll tell you what, if I knew that there's a bunch of angry men coming after me, looking to do harm to me, I'm probably getting the heck out of that pocket and doing anything. Something. 6 sacks, 2 fumbles, 3 interceptions last week. Not acceptable. I'm not sure what to make of this Cardinals team after last week. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs, they did them dirty. Let's be honest. Let's call it the way it is. I was all in on Marquise Hollywood Brown. I was believing in a happy ending here, a Hollywood ending here, so to speak. But I'm talking like a 10-catch, 180-yard performance. Instead, I got 4 catches for 43 and a touchdown. Well, thank the good Lord there's a touchdown because that basically talked me off the ledge last week. I'm sure the injuries to Rondell Moore and Antoine Wesley had some kind of factor in this whole equation here, but it's hard to trust in Hollywood again. especially against Vegas, and especially if he doesn't get any help. And no, Greg Dortch is not the answer. I'm going to tell you this right now. You can go blow your waiver. If you did that, I'm sorry. See if you can get your money back, because Greg Dortch is not the answer here. Now, Keenan Allen last week against the Raiders, he had 4 catches for 66 yards before that hamstring injury kind of sidelined him there. But Mike Williams, he has no excuses. He finished with 2 catches for 10 yards. The only Cardinal that I am trusting in, that I'm believing in here this week, is Zach Ertz, because the Raiders still, after 10 years or more, still cannot defend the tight end position. Gerald Everett, 3 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Basically, against these Raiders, you're guaranteed a touchdown if you're a tight end. Now, James Conner played 72.3% of the snaps in week 1, the 8th highest among running backs. That's great, no, but he did absolutely nothing with it. I mean, he had 10 carries for 26 yards. It works out to about 2.6 yards per carry. Hey, look, I'm a scholar when it comes to mathematics here. But like Brown, his day was saved by a touchdown. Otherwise, it would have been incredibly disappointing, and fantasy managers would be shaking their heads. Now, the Raiders, they held Austin Eckler in check as far as rushing is concerned, limiting him to 36 yards rushing on 14 attempts. Guess what? That works out to about 2.6 yards per carry as well. Now, for Vegas, can anyone stop Davante Adams? Adams finished with a 45% target share. Yeah, 45%. That's 17 targets, and he accounted for 52% of the Raiders' air yards. That's 141 yards. Aaron Rodgers, I'll tell you what, Aaron Rodgers certainly missed that, because all the Packers wide receivers combined only had 120 receiving yards. Look for the Cardinals in this contest to put 2, 3, 4 bodies on Davante Adams, especially when the Raiders get inside the 10-yard line. Because Carr, he was looking Adams' way each and every time. 4 of his 6 targets were directed at Davante Adams. And if I'm the Cardinals, hey, I'm looking like, hey, Patrick Mahomes, he basically had his misfit of toys there go for 360 yards in just 3 quarters. This Cardinals secondary was 100. And not in the good way. They allowed 100 passer rating across the board, every DB, everyone in coverage except Marco Wilson. Ouch. And Marco Wilson, he's probably going to have Davante Adams this week. Now, Renfro, he was a non-factor, while Waller added 70 yards on 4 receptions on 7 targets. Outside of Adams, Renfro, and Waller, who just narrowly missed a touchdown, only 4 other Raider players saw targets, and there were only 5 of them to speak of. Vegas is going to need to find a way to find some balance in this offense, not just among the pass catchers, but a balance between the pass game and the run game. Last week, Josh Jacobs, he did his part, 5.7 yards per carry. However, he only had 10 attempts. Now, that's great, but you're going to need more out of this run game to make a difference this season. Now, fun fact that actually kind of makes me sad. Since Matt Ryan and the Colts managed a tie last week, Derek Carr now leads the NFL in losses right now, 46, and turnovers with 57. Yeah, that's not good. You know what? I'm still in the anger stage of the grieving process right now, so please respect my privacy at this time. Arizona got destroyed in man coverage last week. They love to play themselves man coverage. I think they played the 4th most man coverage a week ago, and Derek Carr and Davante Adams are absolutely going to eat that up. And Marco Wilson, I'm looking at you here. Now, when I see Davante Adams on Marco Wilson there, it's like seeing a pirate and an angel having a baby, and it is glorious. Now, moving on to our second game here, we got the Miami Dolphins and the Baltimore Ravens. We got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle versus a Baltimore secondary that is kind of banged up. Now, remember when Lamar Jackson liked to tweet when he was wearing a Miami Dolphins jersey? Man, I love social media. Apparently, he liked the tweet just to get back at whoever believes that he needs to leave the Ravens organization. Yeah, that sure showed them. Now, will the Dolphins finally unleash this offense against a Ravens defense that on paper looked great, but I don't think in recent memory has lived up to those expectations? Now, for Miami, I look at this Ravens team, and I think this secondary has to be one of the best in the NFL. Then I look at last season's numbers and realize they allowed 33.31 fantasy points per game to the wide receiver position, and they just let Joe Flacco throw over 300 yards. He's with the Jets. Now, I know Marcus Peters was out, and now Kyle Fuller, he's out with the torn ACL, but Chuck Clark, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams, these are all supposed to be formidable pieces in a secondary, and I don't think that any of them has any chance of containing Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Look, I'm looking at you, Marlon Humphrey. I'm looking at you, Brandon Stevens. You guys are going to have your work cut out for you. Hill had 36.4% of a target share, and the Dolphins used play action 46% of the time. If Baltimore's DBs even bite just for a fraction of the second, it is all over. Hill, Waddle, they are going to be behind you by 10 yards, dancing their way to the end zone. Miami, they didn't even fully open up that playbook last week against New England. Hill, he still had 13 targets, hauling in 8 of them for 94 yards. While Waddle, he scored a touchdown on one of his 4 receptions, and he still ended up with 69 yards on the day. Chase Edmonds, he is still a great RB2, especially in PPR formats. He had a 63% snap share and ran a route on 57% of Tagovailoa's dropbacks. Remember just last week when the heartbeat of New York City, Michael Carter, not Breece Hall, touched the ball 17 times against this Ravens defense and established himself as a premier back with 100 yards. Yeah, I think Chase Edmonds in this pass catching game can make a difference there. Now for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, he is betting on himself this season and putting together a nice opening week here with 3 passing touchdowns. But then again, it was the Jets, and he only had 230 yards total. And that's with 17 on the ground. That 17 was the lowest rushing total since like week 5 of 2020. But Lamar, he was still second among all quarterbacks in ADOT on non-screen throws in week number 1. When throwing from inside the pocket on early downs and outside the numbers, Jackson was as good, if not better, than anyone last season. His yards per attempt, 9.2, and a success rate of 57% were tops among quarterbacks, while he also saw a blitz on 32% of his attempts last season. So Miami, they're going to be looking at getting pressure on him without sending that extra guy. With no Marquise Brown, I think we all expected Rashad Bateman to step up this season. He ended up last week with a 71% route participation and an 18% target share against the Jets in that game. With a more competitive opponent here in week number 2, we should see more Bateman and, for that matter, Mark Andrews. Now, the biggest question on my mind, will we see J.K. Dobbins? Sounds like he was willing last week, but the team was thinking more long-term. They decided to hold him back. He's been more of a participant here in practice. I think he had a full practice here on Thursday, so he is trending in the right direction. Kenyon Drake, he led the Ravens with 11 carries and 31 yards. That's 2.8 yards per carry. Last time we saw a healthy Dobbins, he was averaging 14.2 fantasy points per game and 6 yards per carry. Maybe what the world needs now is more Devin Duvernay. If you are considering starting either Mike Gesicki or Isaiah Likely, let me be the first to tell you, don't. Neither one of them had a 45% snap share, and neither one of them participated in 60% of the routes. So that's going to save you some time right now. They'll start six questions. Don't even ask them if they have Gesicki and Likely involved, unless you're trying to start one or the other. And then, hey, good luck to you. Now, speaking of good luck, let's talk about the Washington Commanders there, who pulled off a close one there against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week, and some bad luck to the Detroit Lions, who always seem to have a little bit of bad luck and just can't seem to get over the hump here. Now, I love this game because I think this is going to have more fantasy production here than one might expect. Look, we have DeAndre Swift, we have TJ Hawkins, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, we have Carson Wentz, that's 4 touchdowns, 300-plus yards, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, at least for now until he gets hurt. Now, this game features some absolute studs and some great flex players. I love me an underdog. Can both these teams be an underdog? Can you have two underdogs in the same game? Probably not, but hey, these guys gave us something to watch last week, and they're going to give us a little bit something here in week number 2 with the Lions hopefully hoping for a different outcome. Now, Washington, Wentz, he got some revenge against Doug Peterson, who a couple seasons ago basically discarded him, sent him to the Colts, and then the Colts basically discarded him again. While I promised myself I would not get pulled back in, but here we are. I'm pulled back in. I am ready for the full Carson Wentz experience. That's 4 touchdowns. That's 300 yards. And that is going to be some absolutely horrible interceptions from time to time. I don't know if my heart's ready for this, but hey, it's fantasy football season and touchdowns add to points. And hey, Carson Wentz is a viable starter, especially if you had Dak Prescott. Now, look, I love these Commanders' weapons, especially if they can stay healthy. And I'm looking at you, Curtis Samuel. Now, we got Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. They all caught touchdown passes. Dotson had 2 of them last week, while all posting 80% or greater route participation. I said a few weeks ago, if you want to catch my top 5 fantasy assets for each team, that Curtis Samuel was going to be a sneaky value all season long. And after all, he was basically Deebo Samuel before Deebo was Deebo. Now, on the ground, it was Antonio Gibson who ran for 58 yards on 14 attempts while adding 72 more yards on 7 receptions, despite J.D. McKissic being the third and long guy. Good news, hey, on the good news front here, Brian Robinson appears to be recovering nicely, and he has an outside shot of being ready for week number 5. But the way that Gibson played in week number 1, if Gibson could put a couple more games like that, Robinson's role may not be what was anticipated prior to sustaining his injury. Now for Detroit, DeAndre Swift is on a quest. He is on a quest to join Roger Craig, Marshall Faulk, and Christian McCaffrey as the only backs in NFL history to record 1,000 yards receiving and 1,000 yards rushing in the same season. And after week 1, he's a little bit closer. Swift had 144 yards rushing, 31 yards receiving against the Eagles. Now, Jamal Williams would just step aside. 11 carries, 2 targets, 2 touchdowns. In fact, Williams actually outsnapped Swift 8-2 inside the 10-yard line. Then again, hey, how do you hate Jamal Williams? Have you ever heard him talk in an interview? This guy needs to be protected at all costs. Now, everyone needs some more Jamal Williams in their lives, and I'm all for it. Now, Williams is still getting a third of the work in the backfield here. Now, as for receivers, Dan Campbell seems to like the idea of keeping good players on the field. Look, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he registered at 93% route participation and led the Lions with a 32% target share in week number 1 against the Eagles. That is the 7th consecutive 30% plus target share game for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, Mom always said, let the singers sing, let the dancers dance. I'm here to tell you, let the runners run. That's DeAndre Swift. That's Antonio Gibson. Let's get at it. Now, finally, the last game on the docket that I want to talk about, Tampa Bay at New Orleans, Brady in the Bayou. I wanted to find a way to say Brady and Bayou and throw it together and make some kind of wordplay, if I'm being 100% honest here. When the Saints and the Bucs get together, it is always a classic matchup. New Orleans and this defense have been formidable opponents for Brady. And since the start of the 2020 season there, the Saints actually hold a 4-1 advantage over the Bucs, with the Bucs winning the lone playoff beating. Now, also, I like to watch Brady get beat up on. And the Saints, they've done it. Yes, I'm going to say, why do I like it? Because it was a fumble. The tuck rule should never have existed. And yes, I am still in that anger stage. So please, let me grieve. Now, for the Buccaneers, let's talk about them a little bit more in depth. This Bucs team was able to run the ball against the Dallas Cowboys. True, Dallas's front is a little undersized, but when Fournette got rolling on the left side, big things were happening. Is Sunday Night Football Lenny a thing? It probably should be. Now, he had 127 rushing yards on 21 attempts at 6 yards per carry. Lenny and the Bucs will be looking to run behind that left side early and often after watching what Cordero Patterson did against this team a week ago. That's 120 yards rushing, a touchdown on just 22 carries. Now, Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans, the matchup inside the matchup, the true heavyweight battle. I love wide receiver cornerback matchups, especially as physical as these two get at each other. Yes, Mike Evans, he is a Hall of Famer, and after a 71-yard performance in the season opener, he is just 929 yards shy of his 9th consecutive 1,000-yard season. I still don't think we know what to make of this Bucs offense. They didn't really do anything against this Dallas Cowboys teams. In fact, they really didn't have to. They didn't even get into the end zone, as Ryan Suckup basically had to do everything, hitting 4 of 5 field goals. Mike Evans, Julio Jones, and Russell Gage will be looking to get this Bucs passing game back on track, as the Bucs only threw for 212 yards last week. Now, that said, keep an eye on this injury report. Maybe it's something, maybe it's not. We know Chris Godwin's likely to miss this because, hey, we've already been told that. But we also see Mike Evans and Julio Jones miss practice on Thursday. Maybe this is a veteran rest day, or maybe something's actually more in the air here than we want to admit. Now, for the Saints, Michael Thomas, he participated in 83% of the Saints passing plays, despite dealing with an injury to his hand. Then again, when is Mike Thomas never injured? I mean, he always seems to be injured. Yet, he battled these injuries all through week, and he earned himself a 27% target share in his NFL return. While Jarvis Landry, yes, Jarvis Landry, 7 catches, 114 yards. No one saw that coming. Put your hand up if you didn't. Put it down, because you are lying. I'm telling you that right now. Now, Tampa, they have 2 quality corners here. Carlton Davis, Jamal Dean. This also makes for an interesting matchup. I am looking forward to it. This may be the best receiver group that the Saints have had in a while. And I'm not even including Chris Olave here when I'm talking about it. Also, we talk about protecting Jamal Williams at all costs. We need to protect Jameis Winston at all costs too. The man is a national treasure. But what is going on with Alvin Kamara? Alvin Kamara was on the field for 62% of the Saints' plays against the Falcons in week number 1, and yet 9 carries, 4 targets. That ain't right. That ain't what we want. And then we find out that he was dealing with a rib injury. Beat Raiders, where were you with this information? This is the kind of information I need to know before setting my fantasy rosters. Whew. Okay, now, despite those kind of things, he was in a route on 45% of Winston's dropbacks, which is still below his usual number. The target share was solid at 13%, but a 0.37 yards per route run, that's not good either. Whoo, there. That's it. We've already gone through. We've talked about all we're going to talk about as far as the matchups are concerned. But now I want to know. You've heard what I've had to say. I want to know what you have to say. What are the games? What are the matchups? What are the headlines that you are looking forward to in this week? Drop them in the comments below because we want to hear from you. With that all said, hey, use promo code HYPE22 to get 10% off your subscription over at fantasypoints.com. Over there, we got all kinds of packages that suit whatever you're looking for. DFS, golf, college, the NFL, fantasy, you name it, we got it there. And if you like free, because I do, check out our free shows here every week on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Monday Grades with Wes Huber. That's coming at you at 9 a.m. Eastern. Tuesday, Plugged In DFS with Scott Barrett and JM2Win. That's Jordan Tolan, 2 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays, we get the midweek mailbag with Nick Script. And the daily lineup with Joel Dolan is coming at you every Tuesday to Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. Start off your day with a cup of Joe every morning. With that all said, pain is everywhere, and we just got to keep pushing through. So until next time, this has been your Friday Night Hype Show. Let's go!